Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to my Saturday Hodgepodge, my weekly wrap-up of my reading and booktube stuff and any other issues I want to talk about. So I wanted to start off today with June wrap-up. June was Pride Month, and I read 4 books for Pride Month. I read 2 books by non-binary author Sara Gailey. Sara Gailey writes kind of, I would call it kind of science fiction, kind of futuristic fiction, in which usually there's just one thing. Actually, sometimes it's historical fiction, sometimes it's fantasy. Anyway, usually there's one thing that has been changed about the world in which we live, which kind of alters things. And then Gailey kind of plays with that idea about how it might affect society or individuals to raise all kinds of, I think, really interesting questions. And I enjoy Sara Gailey's books a great deal. The first one I read was Upright Women Wanted. This is set in a kind of post-catastrophe United States of America, in which a lot of the systems that we count on as a part of modern life today have been completely broken down, and we've returned to kind of an Old West type situation in which the purveyors of information are a group of women called librarians who, you know, carry government-approved text all over the place, but they are actually a subversive group, and I won't spoil anything else about that. This was really fun. It's novella length. I think it's somewhere around 150, 170 pages. A really quick read, and I thought it was really interesting and really fun. And I think it's the first book I read for Pride Month, and so it kind of worked out really well for me. It really kind of introduced me or got me going in my reading this month. There, you know, as with most things, I think that Gailey writes, there's a pretty big question. I don't want to call it a plot hole, but a moment where you have to kind of suspend disbelief to an unusual extent, I think, to make the story work, but I still really liked the story and what it had to say. The other book by Gailey that I read was The Echo Wife, and The Echo Wife was unusual in that it doesn't contain any overtly LGBTQ plus storyline, even though, as Fraser Simons pointed out, there are kind of hints of this and maybe subtext of this. It's not as open as it is in most of Gailey's works. So to me, it was a little bit unusual. It involves the issue of cloning and what happens when cloning is taken, or is cloning technology falls in the hands of unethical people who may in fact create a near perfect clone of the woman who invents cloning technology for reasons of his own. And there are all kinds of really great layers of the story. I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. Again, I think there is a significant plot question that comes up, which, you know, you have to kind of suspend your disbelief in that moment for the rest of the plot to kind of work out. But, you know, I thought it was well worthwhile and a good book. The other book I read, which I think I've already talked about, is The Prettiest Star by Sickles. This was just really beautiful, powerful, moving story of a young man in the 1980s who contracts HIV and is dying of AIDS, and he goes home to small town Ohio, and all the controversy and problems that causes in his family, in his community. The story is really emotional, and so the ending should be predictable. I thought it brought up a lot of really important issues about, you know, how we treated members of the gay community, particularly gay men during the 1980s, as though they weren't really human, which I think can speak to a lot of the ways in which we see dehumanizing efforts being focused on the LGBTQ plus community, particularly the trans community right now, and kind of a lesson for us. I thought it was really moving on lots of levels. I did have some questions about the writing, which kept it from being a perfect book, but I really enjoyed it. And then the last book I read for Pride Month was The Death of Vivek by Akwaeke Emezi. This is my second book by Emezi. I also read Freshwater, and I actually think I liked this one better. I think that this story, in part because perhaps it's not quite as personal. I'm not sure that I would call Freshwater autobiographical, but it's not quite as much, I think, comes from the author's own experience, even though I certainly think it does. But because it involves a story that's kind of, I think, a little bit outside of Emezi, I thought it was a better story overall. And the thing I love about Akwaeke Emezi's work is their ability to kind of take us into the world of Nigeria and Nigerian culture and all the different groups, and to create a story that I think kind of, from the best I know, kind of mimics Nigerian storytelling. It involves all kinds of aspects of Nigerian culture, present and past. It uses elements of the Igbo language, I believe, in the book, and the storytelling is really, I think, professionally and beautifully non-traditional Western in its approach, and I really, really like that. And in this case, I thought the story was really, really emotionally effective as well. Essentially, telling the story about the death of this person who was born and named Vivek Oji, who is not comfortable in their gender, not comfortable with that name, and the problems they face in Nigerian society. And in lots of ways, I think this is really powerful to a reader in Western society, because I think it exposes the lack of civilization, what we call civilization, in the way we treat trans people in the United States or in other Western countries, because the way Vivek is treated in Nigeria is no different, really, than the way Vivek would be treated in the United States or Australia or other places. I really think that makes it a really universal and powerful story. There are some elements of it that I questioned. It felt just a tiny bit heavy-handed near the end, and I also sometimes question Emezi's writing choices and writing style. Not all the metaphors, symbols, descriptions work. They're kind of a repetitive sentence structure that comes up from time to time. And again, perhaps this is just a non-Western standardized approach to storytelling and language that doesn't always work. But for the most part, there's a rhythm and a structure of the story that I found to be really effective and really interesting and really fresh, and I really enjoyed the book. I think I like it better than Freshwater. Anyway, there were my 4 books that I read for Pride Month. I also participated in Faulkner in August this month. This year's Faulkner in August is actually a whole summer thing called Summer of Snopes, during which we're reading the Snopes trilogy, which encompasses the Hamlet, which I read in June, the Town, which I'll talk about briefly in my TBR for next month, and then the Mansion will actually be in August. So I read the Hamlet, and this was a reread for me. There are a lot of things in the Snopes trilogy which I can't remember or what was in each book, so this was a good reread for me. It wasn't brand new, which is usually good for Faulkner. A reread of Faulkner is always recommended, in my opinion, because I think you get a lot more out of it the second time. But I really thought the book was great. The first part of the book, I think, is a near masterpiece, and then there's a section, the third section, where I think it kind of Faulkner kind of loses his way and kind of interrupts the flow of the story by introducing a more stream of consciousness point of view and some topics that I found to be a little bit off-putting in their place in the story, but then brings it back in the end with really kind of good, humorous, kind of bitter humor, gothic humor kind of at the end. I've recommended the Hamlet and the Snopes trilogy as an entree point into Faulkner's work, and I still do. I think it's great. I also read Our Lady of the Nile by Scholastique Mukasanga. This is part of my effort over the course of the year to read the Republic of Consciousness Prizes long list. I think it's my 5th or 6th book, and I enjoyed this. I enjoyed the look at Rwandan culture. I think sometime in the 60s and 70s, I think it was when it was set, and that really kind of sparked an interest I had a long time ago. It kind of reignited an interest I had, I guess you should say, in kind of sub-Saharan, Central African issues and politics and tragedies, and inspired one of my books I picked up to read. in July. I thought this was good. I thought the writing was interesting. The story is slow, and you have to kind of be in it for the characters and the culture and the development, I think, to a certain extent. But I did enjoy it. And then the last book I picked up to read, which I finished just today, is The Beet Queen by Louise Erdrich. This is the second book, I believe, in the Love Medicine cycle. I picked it up to read it. I got it from my library to read it as a part of my effort to read all of Erdrich's books. And so I'm trying to work my way through the Love Medicine cycle, not necessarily in order. And so I've read this. I thought it was good. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as Tracks or Love Medicine itself or other of Erdrich's books, but it's good. You get rich characters, you get rich descriptions of place, you get kind of that cultural blending of indigenous American culture with coming, U.S. capitalist culture, imperialist culture as well. But I thought this was good and interesting. I don't know that I'll find an Erdrich book I think is absolutely bad. It's possible, but that wasn't it. So that's what I read for June, I think. Is that all of it? Oh no, I also buddy read The Right to Sex by Amia Srinivasan. I buddy read that with Ami from the channel Ami 1648 parentheses, etc. I'll leave a link to his channel down below. He does some great interviews with authors and thinkers that are always worth your time to watch. I don't always get to them, but I think they're always worth your time to watch. You should go to his channel. We just finished that up, or I just finished that up today. Essentially, this is a book of essays by a feminist scholar looking at all kinds of issues involving feminism and feminism's successes and failures, the divisions that exist within feminism. And I thought the essay collection, for the most part, was successful. Some of the essays I thought were a lot more successful than others. Ironically, I'm not sure I think the title essay, The Right to Sex, is the best one. I thought the essay about not sleeping with your students if you're a teacher or professor was good, and the essay at the end, which was about prostitution, carceralism, and capitalism, I thought that was really good. In part, I liked the last essay because it seemed to offer a prescription about what we should be doing, or what we should be trying to do. And a lot of the essays, one of the things that's kind of I found unsatisfying is that the author does a great job of setting up the issue, of showing us the divisions that exist within the feminist movement, for example, but doesn't necessarily give you that, and here's what we should do. Not that an essay always has to do that, but I guess for me, I like for a political essay, and these are political essays, to say, and here's what we need to do. There's my wrap-up of my reading in June. On to my July TBR, which should be relatively quick, I think. Faulkner in August, Summer of Snopes continues in July with The Town. This is the second book in the Snopes trilogy, and we've to find out more about Flem Snopes and his efforts to gain power and advance himself and drag his family along with him in this book, and so I'm looking forward to that. That's a buddy read with the Faulkner in August group, which is led by Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics, Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads, Roz from Scallydangling About the Books, and Una from the Codex Cantina. And the guys at the Codex Cantina in general. They put out a video about the Hamlet, which I'll try to remember to link below as well. So we're going on to The Town. I'm also buddy reading A Manhattan Transfer by John Dos Passos with Fraser Simon from the channel Springboard Thought. This is a reread for me. Last year I reread the USA trilogy over the summer with Jack the Rambling Raconteur. Really wanted to get back to Manhattan Transfer, which I remember liking quite a bit when I read it the first time. Getting back to it and reading Dos Passos again. And so those are my two kind of buddy reads. It's also, July is also Jane Austen July, so I'm going to be doing a little bit of Jane Austen reading. I'm going to read Death Comes to Pemberley by P.D. James. P.D. James, one of my favorite mystery writers, and this kind of sets a mystery at Pemberley, the home of Elizabeth née Bennet and Mr. Darcy. And so I'm looking forward to this. This is a fairly common Jane Austen July read, I think, in terms of a book that's kind of set or in the Jane Austen world, but not written by Jane Austen. And then I also got from my library yesterday Jane Austen: A Life by Claire Tomlin. I think this is a well-regarded biography of Jane Austen, and I'm looking forward to getting to that. The rest of my reading this month is also going to concentrate on, I think, nonfiction. I did get River of the Gods, Genius, Courage, Betrayal, and the Search for the Source of the Nile by Candice Millard, one of my favorite popular historians. This is about, literally as it says, the search for the Nile. Candice Millard has a thing for river searches, I guess. One of my favorite books, it was the book she wrote about Theodore Roosevelt, his exploration of the river of death in South America. So I'm looking forward to getting to that. And then I mentioned this before. The other book I want to at least start reading is Africa's World War, Congo, the Rwandan Genocide, and the Making of a Continental Catastrophe by Gerard Prunier. As I said, I had, in the past, I had a real interest in what went on in kind of late 20th century sub-Saharan Central Africa, as well as early 21st century. And so I'm looking forward to getting this, but it is going to be a dense read with small print. I'm not sure I'll finish it up in July, but that would be my goal. There's my TBR for July. Wednesday, I posted a video in which a video about where not to start with Jane Austen, in which I suggested 3 books maybe to avoid if you've never read Jane Austen, and then listed 3 books which might be a better starting place. And I expected some controversy about that because Jane Austen, beloved author, and many people here on BookTube really love Jane Austen. And I got so many great comments, but most of them focused on the one omission in that video. So of the 7 books by Jane Austen I've read, I only failed to mention one, and that was Persuasion. I actually, when I filmed the video, I put in a discussion about Persuasion and why I was not putting it on my list of books of where to start with Jane Austen. And it had to do with the fact, and I'm going to phrase this badly again, but it had to do with the fact that to me, this book offers the most mature look at love and relationships in any of Austen's work. It's more subtle. The romance is less, I think, kind of, outwardly, it's less superficial perhaps than you might find in other Jane Austen books, and I realize I probably just got in trouble for saying that. And I couldn't, in the video, I did talk about it, but then I cut it out because what I said, it sounded condescending. It sounded like an old man saying, well, if you're young, you probably can't appreciate Persuasion because it's, more mature. And I couldn't figure out a way to edit it to make it not sound that way. So I just cut that part out, and I got called out by lots of people. Just for the record, Persuasion is my favorite Jane Austen novel. And I didn't leave it out to slide it. I left it out because, well, I choose 3 places not to start and 3 places to start. And that means one book got left out, and that was Persuasion, even though it's my favorite. Anyway, there you go. There's my opinion. There's my Saturday Hodgepodge. I look forward to your comments in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching.